Daniel Carter had dreamed of playing in the FIFA World Cup since he was a little boy. Growing up in a small town in Texas, he spent every afternoon kicking a worn-out soccer ball across an empty field behind his house. His father always told him, "Talent gets you noticed, but hard work makes you unforgettable." When Daniel was 16, his father passed away after a long battle with cancer. Before taking his final breath, he held Daniel's hand and whispered, "Promise me you'll wear the USA jersey one day." That promise became Daniel's purpose. 8 years later, at just 24 years old, Daniel received the phone call that changed his life forever. He had been selected for the United States national team for the upcoming FIFA World Cup. His mother, Emily, cried tears of joy as she hugged him tightly. "Your father would be so proud of you," she whispered. The entire neighborhood celebrated. Friends gathered outside the family home, waving American flags and cheering his name. Reporters interviewed him before he left for New York, where the national team would board their flight to Europe. The players laughed together inside the airport lounge. Some played cards, others listened to music, while the coaching staff discussed tactics for the tournament. Everyone was excited. They weren't just traveling to another country. They were chasing history. Before boarding, Daniel quietly opened his wallet and looked at an old family photograph. It showed him standing between his parents and his younger sister, Sophia, during a 4th of July celebration years ago. "I'll make you proud, Dad," he whispered. Flight 728 took off smoothly under a bright blue sky. The first few hours were peaceful. Passengers relaxed, flight attendants served meals, and several players joked about who would score the first goal of the tournament. Daniel sat beside his closest teammate, Lucas Martinez. "Can you believe we're actually going to the World Cup?" Lucas smiled. Daniel laughed. "It still feels like a dream." Outside the window, endless white clouds stretched across the horizon. Then everything changed. The seatbelt sign suddenly lit up. A calm voice came over the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We've encountered unexpected severe weather. Please return to your seats and fasten your seatbelts immediately." Within seconds, the aircraft shook violently. The drinks rolled off the trays. Luggage compartments burst open. Passengers screamed as the plane dropped sharply. The cabin lights flickered. Lightning flashed outside, revealing massive storm clouds surrounding the aircraft from every direction. Another violent jolt threw several passengers against their seats. Lucas grabbed Daniel's arm. "I don't like this." Daniel tried to smile. "We'll be okay." But deep inside, he wasn't sure anymore. Suddenly, a deafening explosion echoed through the aircraft. The left engine burst into flames. Oxygen masks dropped from the ceiling. Children cried. Adults prayed. Flight attendants rushed through the aisle, trying to calm everyone as panic spread across the cabin. The captain returned over the intercom, but this time his voice was shaking. "We have lost one engine. We are attempting an emergency landing. Please remain calm." The sentence ended abruptly. The aircraft plunged thousands of feet in seconds. People screamed. Daniel closed his eyes and thought of his mother. "I promised I'd come home." The plane continued falling into the darkness. The aircraft fell through the storm like a stone. People screamed as luggage flew across the cabin. Oxygen masks swung wildly from the ceiling while the pilots fought desperately to regain control. Daniel gripped the armrest so tightly that his fingers turned white. Then came another explosion. The right wing caught fire. The captain's final words echoed through the cabin. "Brace for impact." Seconds later, everything went black. Daniel slowly opened his eyes. His ears rang. Every breath burned his chest. For several moments, he couldn't remember where he was. Rain poured over his face as cold winds swept through the broken remains of the aircraft. He pushed himself up, groaning in pain. The plane had crashed in the middle of a vast forest surrounded by rocky mountains. Thick smoke rose from the wreckage, and pieces of the aircraft were scattered everywhere. "Lucas!" Daniel shouted. No answer. He stumbled through the debris, calling the names of his teammates. After several minutes, he heard a weak voice. "Daniel, over here." It was Lucas. His forehead was bleeding, and one of his legs appeared badly injured. Daniel rushed to him and helped him away from the burning wreckage. "We have to move before the fire spreads." Together they searched for other survivors. Near the tail section, they found Coach Miller unconscious but breathing. A flight attendant named Sarah had survived with a broken arm. 2 other players were alive but badly injured. Out of more than 100 people on board, only 7 had survived. The reality hit them hard. There were no houses, no roads, no phone signal, nothing but endless wilderness. As darkness fell, strange animal sounds echoed through the forest. Sarah searched through the emergency supplies scattered around the crash site. "We have a few bottles of water, some emergency food, and a first aid kit." Coach Miller looked around silently. "If rescue teams know our last location, they'll find us." Everyone wanted to believe him, but no rescue helicopter appeared. The next morning, Daniel climbed a nearby hill hoping to find a signal. Instead, he saw only miles of forest stretching in every direction. His heart sank. When he returned, Lucas was staring at the sky. "What if nobody knows where we are?" Nobody answered. Late that afternoon, they heard the sound of a helicopter. Everyone jumped to their feet, waving pieces of metal and brightly colored clothing. "It's here! We're saved!" The helicopter flew across the mountains. Without slowing down, it disappeared beyond the clouds. Silence returned. Sarah began to cry. Daniel looked at the smoke rising from the wreckage. "We're still alive," he said quietly. "And as long as we're alive, we don't give up." None of them knew that their greatest battle had only just begun. The third morning after the crash arrived with freezing temperatures and heavy fog. None of the survivors had slept much. Every strange sound in the forest kept them awake, reminding them that they were no longer athletes preparing for the biggest tournament in the world. They were simply trying to stay alive. Daniel divided the remaining food into small portions. "This is all we have," he said. "No one eats more than their share." Everyone agreed, even though the tiny meal barely eased their hunger. Coach Miller suggested they search for fresh water before anything else. Daniel, Lucas, Sarah, and another teammate, Kevin, headed into the forest while the injured survivors stayed behind. After nearly 2 hours of walking, they finally heard the sound of running water. "It's a river!" Sarah shouted. Relief spread across their faces. They filled every empty bottle they had and washed the dirt and blood from their wounds. For the first time since the crash, they felt a small spark of hope. But the forest had other plans. As they started walking back, Kevin suddenly froze. "Did you hear that?" A deep growl echoed through the trees. Everyone stopped. Another growl came, much closer this time. Out from the bushes stepped a massive brown bear. Its eyes locked onto the group. Nobody moved. Coach Miller had once told the team that panic could get you killed faster than danger itself. Daniel slowly whispered, "Don't run." The bear took another step. Lucas accidentally slipped on a wet rock. The loud noise startled the animal. With a terrifying roar, it charged. Everyone scattered. Daniel grabbed a burning tree branch from a small campfire they had made earlier and waved it toward the bear. "Come on! Get away!" The bear hesitated for a second. Then it turned and disappeared back into the forest. Breathing heavily, Daniel looked around. "Kevin?" No answer. They searched everywhere. Finally, they found him lying at the bottom of a steep rocky slope. He had fallen while trying to escape. Sarah rushed to check his pulse. After several silent seconds, she slowly lowered her head. "He didn't make it." No one spoke. Only yesterday, Kevin had been laughing about scoring goals in the World Cup. Now he was gone. That evening, the survivors buried him beneath a large oak tree. Coach Miller quietly placed Kevin's USA team jacket over the grave. Daniel looked toward the dark sky. "We came here chasing a championship," he whispered. "Now we're fighting just to see another sunrise." Far above the clouds, rescue teams were still searching. But they were looking in the wrong place. 5 days had passed since the crash. The emergency food was almost gone, and the survivors were growing weaker with each passing hour. Hunger, cold nights, and constant fear had begun to break everyone's spirit. Daniel refused to give up. "There has to be a way out," he said. "If we stay here, we'll die waiting." Coach Miller nodded. "The highest mountain nearby might give us a better view. If there's a radio tower, a road, or even a signal, we'll find it from there." The next morning, Daniel, Lucas, and Sarah packed the remaining water and started climbing. The journey was brutal. Sharp rocks tore their shoes apart, freezing winds cut through their clothes, and every step became more painful than the last. After hours of climbing, they finally reached the top. Daniel immediately pulled out a damaged cell phone. For several seconds, nothing. Then suddenly, one tiny signal bar appeared. "It's working!" Sarah shouted. Daniel quickly dialed 911. The phone rang once. Then the signal disappeared. "No!" Daniel yelled in frustration. He moved from one rock to another, holding the phone high above his head. For a brief moment, the signal returned. "The call is connecting," a voice answered. 911, what's your emergency?" Daniel's heart raced. "Our plane crashed. We're alive. Please help us. There are 6 survivors. We don't know our exact location, but we're surrounded by mountains and dense forest." Before he could say another word, the call disconnected. Silence. No signal. No confirmation that anyone had heard enough. The 3 of them looked at each other, unsure whether the message had gone through. As they began their descent, dark clouds rolled over the mountains once again. A powerful storm arrived without warning. Rain turned the rocky trail into a slippery slope. Lucas suddenly lost his footing. "Daniel!" He slipped toward the edge of a cliff. Daniel lunged forward and caught Lucas's wrist with both hands. For a terrifying moment, Lucas hung over the deep canyon. "I can't hold on much longer!" Daniel shouted. Sarah grabbed Daniel from behind, pulling with all her strength. Together, they managed to drag Lucas back onto solid ground. The 3 collapsed, exhausted and shaking. That night, they returned to the crash site soaked and freezing. Coach Miller listened carefully as Daniel explained everything. "So, someone may have heard us," the coach said quietly. Daniel stared into the campfire. "I don't know." Hundreds of miles away, an emergency operator replayed a broken recording from a disconnected phone call. Only 5 words were clearly audible. "Our plane crashed. We're alive." The search was about to begin again. The next morning, the survivors woke to the distant sound of helicopters. Everyone rushed into the open clearing. "It's them!" Sarah cried. Daniel grabbed a piece of the aircraft's metal and reflected sunlight toward the sky. Lucas waved a bright orange emergency blanket with all the strength he had left. The helicopter flew closer than ever before. Hope filled every heart. "They see us!" Coach Miller shouted. But just as the helicopter began circling the area, thick fog rolled across the mountains. Within seconds, the wreckage disappeared beneath a blanket of white. The helicopter hovered for a moment, then turned away. "No, please don't leave!" Daniel screamed. The sound of the rotors slowly faded into silence. Several survivors collapsed in tears. For the first time, even Daniel began to lose hope. That night, Coach Miller gathered everyone around the fire. "We may never play in a World Cup," he said quietly, "but we can still decide how this story ends. We survive together, or we don't survive at all." His words gave everyone a little strength. The following afternoon, while searching near the river, Sarah noticed something unusual. "Look!" Fresh boot prints. They were too large to belong to anyone in their group. Someone else had been there. Daniel followed the tracks through the trees until they reached a small wooden cabin hidden deep in the forest. Smoke drifted from the chimney. He knocked on the door. An old man slowly opened it. For several seconds he simply stared at the exhausted strangers. Then he spoke. "My name is Samuel. I've been listening to rescue helicopters for days. Come inside." The survivors could hardly believe it. Samuel had lived alone in the mountains for years after losing his family in a tragic accident. He had a satellite radio that had been damaged by the recent storms, but after hours of repairing it with Daniel's help, it finally crackled to life. Samuel immediately contacted emergency rescue services. "This is Samuel Reed. I have 6 survivors from Flight 728. They are alive and need immediate medical evacuation." The operator confirmed the message. Within 2 hours, rescue helicopters appeared again. This time, they didn't miss them. As the helicopters landed, Daniel looked back at the burned wreckage of the plane. They had left home dreaming of lifting the World Cup trophy. Instead, they had learned that courage, friendship, and hope were worth far more than any championship. Weeks later, the surviving players returned home to an emotional welcome. Although they never played in that World Cup, the world celebrated them as heroes who refused to give up. Daniel stood beside his father's grave, placed his USA jersey on the ground, and whispered, "I couldn't bring home the trophy, Dad. But I made it home.